You're marrying him because of him, or because of his money? The old man's voice cracked slightly as he asked, standing by the tall gates of the Ashworth mansion, his security uniform faded and cap tilted low to hide the tired lines of his face. Amelia turned, startled by the sudden question. She was holding a bouquet of lilies, white, elegant, perfect for her meeting with the Ashworth family. "Excuse me?" she asked, unsure if she heard him right. "I said," the guard repeated, looking at her straight in the eye this time, "why are you marrying Ethan Ashworth?" The question hung heavy in the air. The early morning breeze rustled through the hedges, and for a moment, Amelia didn't know how to respond. "Because I love him," she said finally, her tone steady. The old man gave a short, almost bitter laugh. "Love," he murmured. That word's lost all meaning in this house. She frowned, not knowing what he meant. "Do you know Mr. Ashworth?" she asked. "I know him better than most," the guard said quietly, opening the gate for her. "Go on, Mississippi, don't let an old man's words trouble you." But his words did trouble her. Ethan Ashworth was the only son of billionaire businessman Richard Ashworth, founder of Ashworth Industries, one of the largest construction empires in the country. After his mother passed away, Ethan had grown distant from his father, frustrated with his cold, work-obsessed ways. Now, at 27, Ethan had built a name of his own, a successful tech startup and a reputation as one of the most eligible bachelors in the city. When he introduced Amelia to the family, he expected approval, but Richard Ashworth had other ideas. The night Ethan announced his engagement, his father merely raised an eyebrow. "So soon?" he asked. Ethan frowned. "It's been 2 years, Dad. She's amazing, and I love her." Richard nodded slowly. "And she loves you?" Ethan's patience thinned. "Of course she does." The old man leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. "Then I suppose it wouldn't hurt to test that love." "Test?" Ethan asked sharply. "You can't test love, Dad." But Richard just smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "You'll see." 2 weeks later, Richard disappeared. He told no one where he went. The only thing the staff knew was that the billionaire had gone on a personal retreat. But what no one realized was that Richard Ashworth had returned to his own mansion, disguised as someone no one would look twice at. He shaved his beard, wore thick glasses, darkened his skin slightly with makeup, and donned the uniform of an aging security guard named Mr. George. He was invisible, yet he saw everything. Amelia visited the mansion often in those days, planning the engagement, checking details, and coordinating with Ethan's team. She was polite to everyone, the chefs, the gardeners, the maids, but to the security guard, she was different. Every morning she'd greet him with a smile, sometimes bringing him a coffee or sandwich from the cafe. "You shouldn't skip breakfast," she'd tell him kindly. When it rained, she'd ask, "Do you have an umbrella, Mr. George?" And when she found him struggling with the heavy gate one day, she ran to help, ignoring the mud splashing her shoes. Richard, hidden behind the face of Mr. George, was stunned. He had expected cold politeness, or indifference, or maybe even the faint arrogance he'd seen in so many women drawn to his son's wealth. But Amelia was sincere. Still, he wasn't convinced yet. One evening, he decided to test her further. "Miss Amelia," he said, his tone hesitant. "May I ask you for some advice?" "Of course," she said warmly. "What's wrong?" He sighed deeply. "My daughter, she's sick. Needs an operation. I've been saving for months, but I'm still short." Her eyes softened immediately. "I'm so sorry to hear that." He shrugged. "That's life. I was wondering if maybe your fiancé could help. He's a good man, right?" She hesitated. He could see the thought flash across her face. This might be a test, or a trap. But after a moment, she shook her head gently. "No," she said. "I can't ask Ethan for something like that." "But," she reached into her bag and took out her wallet. "I'll help you myself." She handed him an envelope, several crisp notes inside. "It's not much, but please, let me know if you need more." Richard's throat tightened. "Miss, you don't even know me." She smiled. "Sometimes you don't need to. If someone's in pain, you help. That's what love is, helping even when there's nothing in it for you." For the first time in years, Richard felt something stir inside him, a mix of guilt and admiration. A few days later, Ethan grew frustrated. "Dad hasn't called once. What's going on?" Amelia tried to calm him. "Maybe he's just taking time for himself." "I doubt that," Ethan muttered. "He's probably watching us somehow." He wasn't wrong, because that very night, Mr. George heard something that broke his heart. Two workers in the garden were gossiping. "You know that Miss Amelia?" one said. "Rumor is, she's only marrying Ethan for his fortune. Smart girl, though. The old man's rich as gold." Richard clenched his fists but stayed silent. He wanted to see how she would react if the rumors reached her. The next morning, Amelia overheard the same gossip, and her reaction was nothing like he expected. She walked straight up to the workers, her voice trembling but strong. "Don't you dare talk about things you know nothing about," she said. "Ethan is the best man I've ever known. I love him for his heart, not his bank account." Then she turned and stormed off, tears in her eyes. Richard's disguise almost slipped that day. Finally, the engagement day arrived. The mansion was lit up with chandeliers and laughter. Guests mingled, reporters snapped photos, and Ethan stood proud beside Amelia, unaware that his father was watching from behind a servant's cart. Just before the event began, one of the waiters tripped, spilling a tray of champagne over Amelia's dress. The crowd gasped. Richard froze, waiting to see if her composure would crack. But instead, Amelia smiled at the trembling waiter. "It's okay," she said softly. "It's just a dress. Accidents happen." The room relaxed. The waiter nearly cried with relief. That was the final proof Richard needed. An hour later, Ethan was called aside. The head of security whispered, "Sir, the new guard wants to speak with you privately. Says it's urgent." Ethan frowned. "Now? During my engagement?" But he went in a small room near the gates. He found the guard waiting. The man removed his cap, then his glasses, and finally wiped off the makeup. Ethan froze. "Dad?" Richard nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. "I had to be sure, son." "What are you talking about?" "I needed to know if she loved you, not your money, not your name, not this empire. So I became the one person she had no reason to impress." Ethan stared, speechless, and she passed every test. Richard continued. "She has more kindness and honesty than I've seen in years. You've chosen well, my boy." Then he smiled, a real smile, the kind Ethan hadn't seen since childhood. When Richard entered the party again, this time as himself, Amelia's jaw dropped. "Mr. George," she whispered. He chuckled. "No, my dear. Richard Ashworth." The room went silent. "I owe you an apology," he said gently. "I misjudged you. I pretended to be someone else to see your true self. And what I found was beautiful." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. "You mean, you were the guard all this time?" He nodded. "And you showed me something I'd forgotten long ago, that love isn't about wealth or appearances. It's about grace, patience, and kindness." He turned to the crowd. "This woman reminded me of what truly matters. Not money. Not power. But heart." Everyone applauded, and Richard raised a toast to the couple. Months later, Richard retired from business. He spent his mornings at the mansion gates, not as a guard this time, but simply as a man who'd learned humility. Sometimes, when new guests arrived, he'd watch them closely, a faint smile playing on his lips, because he'd learned the most valuable lesson of all: true wealth isn't measured in what you own, but in the people who stay when you have nothing. And that lesson, he realized, was worth more than every fortune he'd ever made.